Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Delane Cooper. Now, for those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you'll know I've talked about Clubhouse quite a lot on here. I met Delane through our Intentional Connector community on Clubhouse, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things in the podcast today. But the one thing that I do want to start with, Delane, is the tagline that you have on your Instagram. Because when I saw you first on Clubhouse and heard you speak, the first thing that I thought was your energy is just so unbelievably amazing. And then I read your Instagram, and the first line of your Instagram is dreaming your story into jewelry. So I want to talk about that and where that came from and how that sort of started. But before I do all of that, and I overwhelm you with all of the questions, for people who don't know who you are and what you do you want to give people a basic breakdown?
Well, my name is Delane Cooper, and I pretend I'm a fairy. Just kidding.
I love that, though.
So I am Delane. I am a trained jewelry designer and goldsmith, but I did not always do jewelry. So prior to that, I did sales and marketing from rolling stock, which means railroad equipment, to sales for sailboats, to tech, and into beauty, and also worked for Disney for a little while in their food, health, and beauty sector.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
yeah. So my experience in sales and marketing and branding, primarily working with Disney and a beauty company that I used to work with, really gave me the opportunity to learn what it means to put a brand together, the importance of story, and putting it together so that way the person who's going to view it, use it, experience it, it resonates with them. And so that's what I used to do. And then I had this beautiful opportunity. Husband, he said to me, I know you've been in tech and you do quite well at it, but instead of waiting until you're 65, what would you do to make you happy? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He said, a career change. Like, if you had the opportunity to change your career, what would you do? And I said, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I always thought I was going to have to do sales. And he said, well, sales probably, but I mean, go seek and find out. And so I took the opportunity to explore 3 areas. One was I thought I wanted to be a grade school teacher.
Aww.
And so I went around, and some friends who are grade school teachers, they let me shadow them. And I realized that teachers are very special souls on this planet, because that is a job that there's no way I have the patience to do. And I am just so grateful for the teachers that are out there, whether it be grade school, high school, and university. You're very special souls, and, our world needs you. So I'm grateful for that. I thought I wanted to be a painter. And even as a creative now, it's interesting when I was painting how judgmental of my work I was. So anytime I would pick up a paintbrush, I actually had a creator's block. I did not know how to just put the brush on the paint and put it to canvas or paper. For some reason, there was a fear factor there, and I couldn't get past it. So I decided to explore jewelry. And the reason I chose that route was when I was a foster child, my foster mother's best friend was a goldsmith. And so was her husband. So when my foster parents would go away on holiday, just so I wouldn't get in trouble, they would let me or ask her friends to watch me. And I would hang out with them and had the opportunity to play in their studios and got to learn from them. And so the idea of doing jewelry fascinated me. And so I did take some courses just to see if I was serious about it. And then a very good friend and mentor of mine, she said, Delane, I taught you everything I know. It's time for you to go to school if you want to take this seriously. And so I did. And I did. I loved it. And there was something about being at the bench where it was, I sat down and it was just me and the bench, Crystal. And it didn't matter. I could pull out a piece of copper, silver or gold, hammer to my heart's delight, melt things. And even if I melted a ring, like, well, I failed at that. That sucked. But I knew I could melt the metal again and use it. So there was this, the more that I failed, the more, it took me a while to realize this, and I'll be honest about it. But there was something beautiful about failing at the bench, because the more I failed at the bench, it helped me realize that I could accept my failures and accept facets of me, because I don't know if everybody has this feeling, or people that have experienced childhood trauma, but as a person who had experienced childhood trauma, perfectionism was something that I suffer from, or suffered. I'm better at it than I used to be. And I think that's where creating jewelry had helped me learn about myself and actually start laughing at myself, because I had put on such a facade. I mean, I was taken away and put into a foster family at 15. And so from the time I was in my teens and into my early 20s, I was too busy trying to put this perfect image of a complete human being
Right.
that people would accept and want to be friends with. And I was so busy with that facade, just about perfecting it, that any faults, failures, like I hid behind the mask. And sitting at the jewelry bench just gave me that opportunity to actually take that mask off, if you will, like metaphorically undo the ribbon behind the mask and actually take that mask and place it aside and really look at myself. That's why I love making jewelry. It gives me the opportunity to learn about myself. That was a long answer to your question.
That was a great answer to my question, though, because there is so much beauty in failure. And we tend to, especially as adults, we tend to try to strive for that perfection and not want to look at those failures, because we feel like the person next to us or the person two doors down is doing so much better than we are. Mm-hmm. And if they can, have this picture perfect life, why can't we? So I think it's beautiful that the thing that you found your purpose in, the thing that drives your soul, is the thing that allows you to connect with yourself in all of your different levels of humanity, the failures, the struggle, the beauty, the challenge, all of it. That's such an amazing answer. So I am grateful that it was super long, because I think it's a beautiful answer. And since we are talking about your jewelry, you have amazing things. So I'm going to post a link in the show notes for this episode so that people can follow you on Instagram and go to your website and all of that fun stuff. But you have just created, or just recently, I actually think it's been a few weeks now, but something called the Thrive the 5 pendant, I believe is what it is. Do you want to tell people about that? Because I think this is pretty special.
So Thrive the 5 was actually launched last year in collaboration with this incredible woman. I was going to name her something else, go by what she's known for, but she is this incredible soul and woman first. And I am just so honored to be connected to her. And honestly, it was a cold call. And reached out to her because I was working on a particular project. And as a result of that project, we developed a friendship. And I had asked her, would she be open to collaborating on something with me? And she said, oh my gosh, yes. And so she shared her story with me, and I created this pendant called Thrive the Five. They are based on Christina Zanato's life's work. She is a scuba diver off of Grand Bahama Island, and she is a conservationist, an explorer, and an educator. And in particular, she works with Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks and educates the people on land the importance of sharks in the ocean. And in some cases, for those that are interested in learning about sharks, they can take a course with her and learn to swim amongst the sharks.
That's amazing.
And it's absolutely beautiful. So Thrive the Five was inspired by dive bubbles, because she is a scuba diver. And each bubble has a specific meaning. And because it's really long, I invite people to go to my website. But the 5 dive bubbles are also based on 5 themes that Christina embodies. And they are the magic of freedom, curiosity, intelligence, adventure, and experience. Christina Zanato has been doing this for over 27 years. Wow. And she embodies the magic of all of those 5 attributes. And so that is the inspiration of the design. But something that was important is that Christina wanted to give back to the place she calls home, Grand Bahama Island. With some countries, in particular on some islands, the young girls sometimes don't finish school because of limited access to education and scholarships. And so proceeds of this pendant actually go towards the Thrive the Five scholarship, where in 2022, we're going to be offering our first scholarship. My stretch goal is to offer 3, so I'm working very diligently on that. But for sure, 1 scholarship to a grade 12 Bahamian girl. So it's accessible to Bahamian girls in grade 12 that are in public school to further their education in STEM. And then they get to work with Christina in particular in the marine sciences and scuba dive with her.
That's such an amazing thing. And so I invite everyone to go check it out on the website. There is a story on the website as well about it. And it's a beautiful pendant. And I am so unbelievably in love with it. 1, because I'm a scuba diver. 2, because you have been talking about it recently. Yes, I am a scuba diver. See, all the things we don't know about each other yet. I am a certified cavern diver.
Are you Patty or Nowie?
Patty.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you have no idea. This is important because they just got, now a little caveat because I don't know the difference, cavern versus cave diving, but there is a particular cave that Christina and her, I would say, partner guide, who will be offering guided tours on Grand Bahama Island to a particular cave. And it just got approved.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. So you would get to, if you go, Crystal, you get to see Janelle.
That's amazing. I will totally have to look into that. That sounds fabulous. I would love that.
Sorry, we went on a tangent there.
That's okay. People will understand. It's fine. They might be scuba divers and be interested too. You never know.
I'm Nowie. So I did get a Nowie certification.
Awesome. I think you froze. Oh, are you back?
Oh, yeah.
There you are.
Okay.
Technology.
Fantastic.
Scuba diving for me was, my best friend was actually dating a guy who owned a scuba diving store. So it just kind of at the time made sense for us to both get certified. And she ended up engaged to him, and we both got fully certified. And I am such a water person. I am drawn to the water. Everywhere I live, I want to be. You are only a short distance from me. So you understand we're surrounded by the Great Lakes, right? Like
Yes.
water is just the thing that draws me in. It's my peaceful place. It's the like, I've just had a day and I just need to sit by the water kind of person. So scuba diving just sort of came naturally to me.
Oh, I am so excited. Oh, you have no idea how my heart is singing right now.
I love it. It's the more I get to know you, the more I understand just how deeply connected we are without even knowing each other because we haven't met in person yet, but we have been able to, chat on Zoom like this. We have been able to talk in our intention rooms and we have been able to listen to each other's stories, but it's amazing how connected you can be to someone who you really didn't know.
No, it's amazing. I love Clubhouse. Thank you, Clubhouse.
Right? Exactly. And I keep talking about it here on this podcast. And I'm sure some of the listeners are still going, what is Clubhouse? But I promise you, like, just go check it out because we have all been talking about it. We have all become connected through it. It has opened the world for all of us. And I am so excited for where it is leading all of us. And actually, since we're on the topic, you lead a room on Clubhouse talking about creativity. And I want to touch on that because I was in one of those rooms and you were talking about how sometimes as creative people, we can sort of get stuck in our own heads and be sort of judgmental of the judgmental part of us. And it's actually not necessarily a bad thing from a creative standpoint. And it gave me this sort of like aha kind of moment because you were describing it to me. And I was like, every time I walk away from something creative, it's because of that judgment. I'm walking away because it's not the perfection, like we were talking about earlier, that I think it needs to be. And learning how to be okay with that takes a little bit of practice, but getting to the point where you are okay with that is actually sort of this monumental, like, you know what? It was a paint by numbers and I painted outside of the lines. That's okay. Right. And it's this sort of huge relief. So do you want to talk a little bit about that creative room, sort of why you do it, why you think it's important?
Do a room on Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern, and it's called The Creative Experience, and the topics change week to week. And the room is hosted under the Intentional Connector Club. And I wanted to have a conversation with other creatives or people who identify as creatives, because we are all creative. And it's an opportunity for those who maybe hold traditional jobs in the workplace, whatever that may be, and can still be creative, as opposed to someone like myself who is an entrepreneur, full-time creative, and doing from the accounting to, the creation on my own as a solopreneur. So the reason I created was to, one, have a place for people to come together, but also give a little insight of how I see creativity and hopefully open up people's eyes to see that they are creative, and two, the creative experience isn't just all full out joy. There are facets of creativity that are frustrating. They can stymie us. In some cases, get us depressed if we're not finding our creative flow.
Right.
And it's a side that I think some people who don't identify as being creative, they think creatives, it just flows and it happens. And that's not the case. In particular, for several weeks, we talked in that room about the inner critic and being able to befriend the inner critic. And by doing so, I walked people through an exercise, for example, one, to identify the voice. Is it your mother, your father, or is it even your own voice? And is that voice aggressive? Is it angry? Is it finger pointing type voice? What's that voice sound like? And to change that voice from whatever that was to something fun and hilarious. So my voice, I actually changed it twice. And so mine is Lisa Simpson, because I like how the fact that she tries to be logical, but there's really something funny about her voice. And so my inner critic's voice is Lisa Simpson. The other thing that I asked participants to do is to actually name their inner critic, because it's easy to just kind of go into this inner dialogue and spiral down, if you will, or just spiral in a circular conversation. And the idea is if you give your inner critic a name, then it's a dialogue, and we have agency to engage in an open dialogue. I know this almost sounds like, Delane, are you asking us to actually speak to ourselves in our own voices? We might sound like we have multiple personality disorder, but that's not what I'm talking about. And when I say engage in open dialogue, for example, I actually engage in open dialogue through my journal. So number 2 was to name the inner critic, and name the inner critic something fun. So whether it be Rascal or someone named theirs Beavis, I know. Someone named it Little D. Some people get very creative, and I've kind of go in between Rascal and some weird, funny alien name that I come up with, whatever spits out. So, but by doing so, we're able to actually engage in that open dialogue and befriend the inner critic, because sometimes having those conversations within ourselves is important. Now, the reason to actually name and give it a funny voice is to shorten the dialogue with that inner critic, because we have, as a creative, we need to be able to take action and move forward to create. If we are stuck in this circular inner dialogue, we prevent ourselves from actually taking action. And hence why I walked people through that exercise to shorten that cycle. So I'm making the story up. But say if I'm sitting at my jewelry bench and I want to figure out what to do with this piece of silver, instead of just picking up the saw and sawing, I might say, well, you've already created 3 rings. Why would you need another one? Blah, 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 blah. Right. And I can just sit there and say, Rascal, not today. I'm just going to let the saw flow, and however the saw goes. And if it doesn't work, it either goes to scrap or I melt it. Thank you. Turn on music.
Right.
And so that's how that exercise helps. And so for anybody that wants to experience or join in those kinds of conversations and just listen to the realities of what creatives go through, that's what that room's all about.
I love that. And I think it's really important, as you said, so many people don't identify as creative, but there is a creative part to all of us, even for the simple little things like doing a garden in the front of your house. That requires creativity, and people don't necessarily see it that way unless you garden full time, and that's sort of the thing that you do, right? But I think we all have those different aspects of ourselves. We just might not label it as that thing because, there's somebody that we know that does that full time, and that's their profession, and that's what they get paid for. And for us, we don't. So I love your room in part for that reason, because it sort of allows us all, even if we don't in our own minds think of ourselves as creative, it allows us the permission to say, well, yeah, I am creative. It might only be in this 1 or 2 circumstances, but I am a creative person. I can be a creative person, and it doesn't have to be, the thing that pays my bills for me to still be able to fit into that. So I love that.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up, Crystal.
Your magic. It's all you.
Magic Mondays, even though today's not Monday.
Magic Mondays and Fireworks Fridays. I love your Fireworks Fridays. It's funny. Last week, I think it was, I woke up on Thursday morning. I was like, it's Fireworks Friday. And then I was like, oh, right. It's not Friday. You're sticking with me.
Oh my God.
It's fantastic. I love it. So I do want to ask you, because you are a fellow Canadian, you are in Ontario just like I am. And because you are an entrepreneur, how has the last year been for you? Because I think a lot of people listening to this podcast have heard me express what it's been like for the last year to sort of go through COVID here. But I don't know that necessarily everyone has experienced the same thing. So, do you want to, if you're comfortable, talk about sort of how it's been to run your own business and sort of go through COVID over the last year?
Yes, thank you for that question. It really has been a challenge. My business has always ran on word of mouth and face-to-face meetings. And so when in 2020, when our first lockdown happened in March, my business stopped. And at first, I think with many, similar to many of us in Ontario in particular, thought this will only be several weeks. It's okay.
Right.
This is kind of a mandatory vacation. Cool.
Right.
Get to do yoga every day, have, whatever. And it wasn't until that it was dragging into the summer. And then I had to figure out, oh boy. Now, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love my husband. Now, I had the joy of actually having interface with someone. Whereas I really felt for my friends who are single and live alone and could not engage with other people. So from that perspective, it was I was making sure to be grateful because I did have my husband. One thing that I realized and observed in other people and also within myself, the importance of touch. I am a hugger, Crystal. And when I see my friends, it really, I hug. And yes, I love my husband and I am grateful that I got to hug him, but not being able to see my friends and touch them. And you will always know when you're in your friend's zone, like a hug is you're in their personal zone, if they are okay or not. And through a Zoom call or a FaceTime call, yes, we can all put on makeup or put on our best mask and, put on the good face. And yes, we're trudging along.
Right.
But that part was really hard because some of my creativity actually comes through conversation with friends and what's important to people. Freedom of expression, of different emotions. What does love look like? What does anger look like?
Right.
Seeing if I could capture some of those emotions in jewelry. So from a creative standpoint and a human standpoint, in regards to business, it also invited me, and I took the opportunity to figure out how was I going to I don't want to just say pivot because it wasn't a pivot. A pivot to me, especially in basketball, is you're using your point foot, you're going to spin and then take off going another way. That's not what I was doing. I had to explore and actually diverge from what I knew, how my business operated, and look at other ways of connecting with people. And fortunately, social media was around. And I think social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and any of the others that I did not name, were around for us to actually connect. And so I showed some of my work, and I think when people are on social media, they kind of go back to people they haven't connected with in a while and scroll, and right. Delane makes jewelry. That's right. And so I was really lucky to have had people connect with me and want me to create pieces. So, there is that part where people always get married. And so, yes, I did make wedding rings. Um, it's not like I'm that person all the time. And just had a couple of really beautiful opportunities that were unexpected, quite frankly. Then Clubhouse came along, and that really changed my world because I got excited about the people that I was connecting with. Here is this audio app that I can't see anyone.
Right.
I'm only looking at icons on my phone, but it's really connecting with the stories that were being shared, how they're shared. When stories are shared, people are sharing from the heart, and you connect or you don't connect.
Right.
And I think you know this, Crystal. Yeah, I'm not for everyone. My maybe I shine too bright, or my vibrance could be too much for people. But that's okay, because in some of the rooms they're timed, or they can leave or I leave.
Right.
And so I think through this audio app, being able to connect with individuals from all different parts of the world and connect on, for me, creativity and different kinds of creativity, and get to talk about it from a philosophical standpoint to a tactile standpoint. And then collaborating with people. It's just incredible. So I've personally experienced in my business the highs, the lows, frustrations for sure. But I'm grateful that, one, my husband and I have been healthy through the whole thing. I'm really grateful for that because it was sad to hear from friends that they did lose family members.
Right.
And so I think what really helped me through the pandemic, or our lockdowns in Ontario, was gratitude, being grateful for what I have, where I'm at, and the experiences, and that I have the privilege to continue on.
That's huge. And I think you've brought up a few things. So first of all, hello, I'm a huge hugger. That has got to be the thing that has, like, the first couple months, I was like, okay, I can do this, it's just a couple months. I will be fine. And then as it slowly, as you said, creeped into summer and then fall, it was like, okay, this is hard not to hug people, not to, and to explain, like, my best friend has a 5-year-old, to explain to her, like, Auntie can't hug you because there are these germs that you can't see. And because you have asthma, they could make you really, really sick. And I have to stay, 10 feet away from you with a mask on, but I love you. And I just want to hold you and tell you it's going to be okay. And the inability to do that for us as humans, I think, is so emotionally draining for us, because I think it took this for those of us who are huggers, especially, to realize how much we need that, because there's an energy exchange that happens when you hug somebody you care about. There is, as you said, you can instantly feel sort of where that person is and what's going on with them. And, I hugged because, we've all started to get vaccinated. I had a mask on the other day when I visited my best friend for the first time in 15 months. And she said to me, like, I need to hug you. Is that okay? And I was like, you know what? We've both been vaccinated. We're both wearing masks. We're both comfortable with the hug. Let's do the hug. And it was one of those long, awkward, but I was totally okay with it, because I was like, I will hug you in this long, awkward 10-minute hug, because we both just need it. And I cried after, and she cried after. And it's just,
you're making me cry as I'm listening to you.
It is. It's just there's this emotional release, because the instant you do it, you are still processing all of the COVID thoughts, right? Like, could we be putting each other at risk, even though we've been vaccinated and are wearing masks and everything else? But at the same time, you're like, just so relieved to have the human touch that you haven't had. It's such a big thing for our mental health. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's a lot of people that are struggling with that. And I think there'll be a lot of people who continue to struggle with that as we sort of get to whatever the next step of all of this is, because some people won't be comfortable enough to hug right away, even if they are huggers. Other
Right.
people are going to want to jump right back into the hug bandwagon. And I think we need to allow the space for all of that to happen. And the best way for us to do that is to have those communications of like, I want to give you a hug. Are you okay with having a hug? Are you not comfortable with having a hug? And so there is going to be this awkward, I don't know, 6 months to a year that we go through where we're constantly asking those people. But hey, as a hugger, I'm 100% willing to walk around with a sign that says, I will hug you if you're okay with that.
I know. Me too.
Slowly but surely, we're getting there. Slowly but surely. The other thing that you brought up that I do want to touch on is the fact that you sat in gratitude for the last year. And I think that's super important because it's been a really hard year, especially for those of us in Ontario, because, 15 months of lockdowns on and off and on and off and on and off, and people's heads are just spinning and they're so done with it all. It's hard to look for the stuff to be grateful for. And so when you said, I'm grateful that I have my husband to talk to, I'm grateful that, I have been able to do a little bit of work. For people listening, those may seem like small things, but it's huge to be able to acknowledge that's something that is a good thing that I can hold on to and be grateful for, even with everything else that's going on. And I think it can be hard, especially in a time of crisis like this, to find those things. But even if it's as simple as I have a roof over my head and a warm bed to sleep in tonight, having that attitude changes how you approach whatever the next struggle is that sort of comes along. So thank you for bringing that up because I think that's really important.
Yes, I would like one comment though.
Sure.
For not the next struggle, for the next challenge.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes. So for those listening, what Delane has just done is something that I talk about often, and that's just reframing how we speak, because she's 100% right. It is not a struggle. It will be a challenge that we will learn or grow or change from, but we are fully capable human beings and we can handle it. So thank you, Delane, because that was awesome. I love it. So I could talk to you forever, but I don't want to keep you because, I know you actually have things to do other than talk to me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I typically end the podcast by asking people a few questions. Are you game to answer?
Let's do it.
Awesome. I love it. And for those of you who don't actually know Delane yet, she is a ball of energy. And before I get to the questions, before we started recording, I had said to you, I love how much energy you have. And you attributed it to celery juice. Celery juice is something you do every day. And I said, I'm not sure I could do that every day. So let's touch really quickly because you have a routine that you go through daily, which does help you bring this energy to the world that is so magical. Can you touch just a little bit on why that's important for you and sort of what your routine is?
Sure. So there's a big difference. Some people have morning routines, such as a routine to me is they get up, they brush their teeth, they make the bed, right, and go into the kitchen and make a cup of coffee. That's a routine. And most of the time you can do that without actually being present, conscious. It's almost like muscle memory. And so your body just knows these are the things that we need to do. I actually have a morning ritual. And the difference is that, yes, I do have my morning routine of brushing my teeth and making the bed, that kind of thing. My ritual, and it's important because a morning ritual for me sets up my full day to have creativity happen and be in flow. And so my morning ritual involves several things. One is to have 16 ounces of celery juice every morning. It seems to, before that, I drink 8 ounces of water and then celery juice. I do 20 to 30 minutes of stretch and yoga and 10 minutes of Wim Hof breathing. And then something that has been added, and it is through Clubhouse, every morning at 9:00 Eastern, I joined the Intentional Connector Club, do their room, getting started right, morning intentions. And the reason I do that is the people in that room, you included, Crystal, Each of you are threads that contribute to the fabric that I weave every day. And this fabric in my life is getting larger and larger. And one day will be this incredible quilt that will cover the planet Earth. My routine, or my ritual, helps me get my mindset and my body set and my spirit set to engage in my gifts of creativity, and also be deliberate with time and be present and conscious of what I'm doing. And I'm just grateful that, especially having the Getting Your Started Right in Intention morning room, we've been doing that, for 168 days.
Right.
And that, being able to say, oh, I do that, yes, that can be part of routine. But because it is sacred for me and I am present with it and present to listen to the individuals in that room, it is part of my ritual. So thank you for asking. The difference between ritual and routine.
I love that. And you did explain that the other day when we were in one of our rooms, because we were having this conversation about the room becoming routine for people. And when you called it a ritual, I instantly thought of it differently, because a routine, like you said, you kind of can go through mindlessly. And so for it to be a ritual and for you to actually show up wholeheartedly with intention and be very present in the thing that you're doing, even if it is as simple as drinking your celery juice every morning, that is a different kind of experience than just doing it because you have to, so to speak. So I love that you spoke about that. And I think it's really important for people who are listening to this to rewind, go back, hit the 10-second, 30-second button and listen to that explanation again, because there are things that we choose to do every day that are not necessarily routine. They are that ritual because of the emotional connection we have to them, the presence that we're paying them, and just how purposeful it is for us to make it a part of our life on a daily basis. So I loved that. So thank you for explaining that.
Oh, you're welcome, Crystal.
Okay, now I'm going to hit you with the questions.
Let's do it.
So the first question is, what's the best or the worst piece of advice you've ever been given, and why?
Let's see. I guess I could have cheated and listened to these questions last time.
That's totally okay.
Best piece of advice, be present. As someone who has, and that's where mindfulness has come to me. I started doing that back in 2005. And when I say be present, I'm not talking about necessarily meditation, but be present in the present moment, listen, be in your body, don't dissociate. As someone who is a person of experience from childhood trauma, dissociation was something that was big for me. So something that I've been practicing, I would say, since my 40s, is be present. It's not an easy thing to practice because sometimes we do want to tune out and tap out. But best piece of advice, be present.
That's huge. I love that, especially because you're right. You know, there's a lot of times when we have 900 million things on our to-do list and we want to be multitasking. Well, I could do this one thing while I'm doing this other thing, but you can really only pay attention to one thing at a time and be present in that one thing. So I think that's super awesome. So thank you for that answer. The next question is, what's one thing about yourself you want to work on?
The continued practice of being kind to myself and not speaking ill of myself. Words matter. And making sure that if I make a mistake or I could do something in the kitchen and I'll actually drop something and say, you stupid. It's those subtle instances that we don't realize our body and our minds are actually recording the messages we send to ourselves. And when it matters, when we are sitting and reflecting, we don't realize it, but those moments that we've hid away and thought didn't matter actually do come up in a time of sadness or anger. And when it comes out, because of that negative talk, it comes out as a really bad Tasmanian devil or a dragon. And so being kinder to myself is a practice that I continue to endeavor on, and being kinder with words. So if I do drop something, be kind and say to myself, it happens, you weren't present, or, well, something to clean up.
I love that. That's huge. And I love that you spoke about the fact that words do matter, because our cells have a memory, and the most important conversation we're ever going to have is the one we have with ourselves in our own head. And if our cells are constantly remembering that we're belittling ourselves or putting ourselves down or constantly judging ourselves, then that important conversation is always going to be a negative one. So I love that. So thank you for sharing that. Next question is, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say, child, hold on and enjoy the ride, because it is going to be one rocky ride. I hate roller coasters, but man, my life was a roller coaster. That was an interesting ride. So if I go back, I'd just kind of give a heads up and say, hold on, it'll be a wild ride. And I say that because I'm at where I'm at today, and I'm grateful for it because of the gifts that I do. And I wouldn't change who I am, what I do, or how I do it. If I tried to give some piece of advice to actually change the trajectory of where I'm at, you and I would not be sitting here.
Right.
And I am just so grateful that I get to connect with another beautiful soul. And so I would give myself the advice of, hold on, it'll be a rocky ride.
I love that. And it's interesting because you say you're not a fan of roller coasters. So I had a pretty traumatic, chaotic childhood. And when I was younger, I loved roller coasters. But as I worked through my trauma as a young adult and into my later adulthood, I started hating roller coasters. I hate the feeling of them. I hate the anticipation. I hate that. I even Ferris wheels, I'm not a fan of anymore. There's something about that level of, I don't even know if it's lack of control or too much excitement or too much fear of the unknown or what it is. Like, I'll have to take some time to process that, but I don't like any of them now as an adult, now that I've worked through that trauma. So it's interesting that you don't like coasters either. I wonder if there's something there in that, dealing with sort of releasing
For sure,
the
it's
trauma.
too much stimulation.
Yeah.
And I think my body is exhausted from that kind of stimulation.
Mm.
And I honor that. And I find joy and the thrill of living life. I don't need the roller coaster to give me the thrill of what life is about.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm stealing that from you because I love that. Thank you for that. I am so I love that. I am honoring that in my own body. I love it. I love it. See, I love talking to you. Oh, you're fantastic. Okay. The last question is, what does happiness mean to you?
Happiness means sitting with myself and knowing that my heart, my soul, my body are in alignment, and I can be giddy and giggle all by myself, or even sitting in a Starbucks and not matter if anybody's watching. That's true happiness to me.
I love that. That's beautiful. Oh, you are an amazing human being. I am so blessed that we happen to have crossed paths and that we're so close to each other, because as things open up, I might actually be able to sit down with you in real life. I'm so excited about that. So I do want to be respectful of your time. So before I let you go, is there anything else you would like to share with the Chasing Happiness community?
I am just grateful that we had this time together, and grateful for you, Crystal, because you bring so much joy out into the world, and excited to hear your future guests on your podcast because you are such a bright light. You honoring yourself and your gifts through voice and communication is something that needs to be done. And I'm grateful that you are honoring that in yourself and sharing it with us.
Oh, Delane, you're going to make me cry. You're amazing. I'm sending you a Zoom digital hug, I guess, if I can do that.
Oh.
You're fantastic. I appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful for you joining me. And I'm so excited for where life is going to lead you and where it's going to lead me, and sort of all of the changes that have unfolded so quickly for all of us. This living a life of intention has changed so many of us that are a part of this intentional connector community. And I feel like I've found my people.
Yeah, definitely. And I am grateful that we were connected through intention, and that we continue to not only have we found our people, we continue to expand that circle.
Yes.
And it's just so beautiful. And it's just ever so changing. Thank you so much, Crystal, for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining me, and thank you for listening. As I said, I will put all of Delane's contact information in the show notes for this episode so that you can follow her journey. You can get in touch. You can buy her beautiful jewelry or anything else that she decides to put out into the world, because she is a magical spirit. And she said she's sort of a fairy at the beginning, and I believe she's a magical fairy unicorn. So I'm going with it, and I'm sticking with it, and you should follow her because she is exactly that. So thank you for listening this week. I hope you all have a magical week, and I will chat again with you soon. Bye for now.